All right, let's get right into it. We usually think of pain as a purely physical thing, right? You get an injury, you have a disease, and you feel pain. But what if the most powerful tool for managing chronic pain wasn't in a pill bottle at all, but was actually right between your ears? Today, we're going to dig into some really fascinating new research that shows how our minds can literally act as a control room for the pain we feel.
So, is all pain just in your body? It seems like a simple question, but the answer is way more complex than you'd think. For centuries, we've treated the body as the one and only source of pain. But we now know the brain is the ultimate decider, the one that interprets everything. And sometimes, it's the one creating the pain signal in the first place.
Okay, before we go one step further, this is absolutely critical. What we're talking about today is for chronic long-term pain that a doctor has already looked at. I mean, there's this really scary example of someone who had persistent back pain and kept trying different therapies. Turns out, it was a tumor pressing on their spine. So the bottom line is, get a proper medical diagnosis first, always. Okay, so with that super important point made, let's get to the really wild idea here. Sometimes the pain message just keeps on firing long after the physical reason for it is gone. Or, in some cases, the pain might not have a clear physical cause to begin with. And that leads us to this term you might have heard, psychosomatic pain. And let me be super clear about this. This is not imaginary pain. It's not all in your head in that sense. The feeling is 100% real. It's physical pain, but it's being generated or maybe cranked up or kept around by things like stress and memories. The pain is in your body, but the command center, that's in your brain. So how does that even happen? Well, researchers have just uncovered this absolutely mind-blowing neural pathway. It starts with an everyday trigger. Could be a sight, a sound, even a particular smell. That trigger activates what's called an implicit memory. You know, that's the kind of memory that works automatically, like how you just know how to ride a bike. But instead of that memory creating an emotion, the signal gets hijacked. It's rerouted from the brainstem and sent straight to the brain's pain center. And that pain center then sends a very real pain signal out to the body. To really get a handle on this, there's a great analogy that people use, and it does a perfect job of explaining why chronic pain can stick around even when an injury is long gone. Think of normal acute pain, like a fire alarm that's working perfectly. A fire starts, the alarm goes off, you put the fire out, you turn the alarm off. Simple. But with chronic pain, it's like the fire's been put out, the injury healed, but that dang alarm is just stuck, blaring away, signaling danger long after the danger has passed. And this faulty alarm can trap you in what feels like an impossible loop. Think about it. Stress and anxiety can make the pain worse, but living with pain is stressful, which of course creates more anxiety. And then just the fear of the pain coming back can be enough to, bring the pain right back on. It's this vicious cycle that just feeds itself. And look, this link between memory and pain isn't just some abstract theory. We're seeing this play out in some truly incredible, real-life stories where fixing an old emotional issue literally switched off years of physical pain. Okay, get this. There was a woman who needed a walker to get around for 20 years. You'd think, okay, gotta be something seriously physically wrong with her, right? Well, it turned out the root cause wasn't in her bones or her muscles at all. And this just shows you the insane power of the brain. The moment they figured out how to switch off those old memory responses that were triggering her physical symptoms, poof, she never used that walker again. She would send pictures of herself walking around freely year after year. The walker was just gone. Or how about this one? A woman had chronic back pain that started after a car crash. But when she started really talking about it, it wasn't the physical crash that was the lingering issue. It was this huge emotional turmoil in her personal life that was happening at the exact same time. Once she finally resolved that conflict, the back pain she'd lived with for years just disappeared. All right, so if our brain is the control room, how do we get behind the console? Let's talk about some actual practical techniques people are using to get a feeling of control back over their own pain signals. This one is super simple, but really powerful. You know, when we feel pain, it's often this big, spread out feeling, right? My whole back hurts. This exercise asks you to just focus. Close your eyes, find that general area, and then imagine shrinking that feeling down, smaller and smaller, until you can find its absolute center, like a tiny pinhead. And then you mentally just pull it out. It's about giving your mind a direct, focused command. Here's another great metaphor, the control room dial. This was used with a man in a wheelchair who was in a ton of pain. And instead of some complex process, he was simply asked to imagine a big dial right in front of him, labeled 1 to 10, that controlled his pain. And you know what? He mentally turned his pain from a level 9 all the way down to a 1, just like that. But when they asked him to turn it to 0, he refused. And the reason is kind of heartbreaking. He said the nurses who visited every day were his friends, and he didn't want to lose that connection. It's this idea called secondary gain, where on some subconscious level, there's a benefit to being sick. And that can be a huge barrier to getting better that has nothing to do with the body. Okay, let's go even deeper now because this stuff gets pretty wild. Let's look at how things like visualization can create actual, measurable physical changes in the body. You know, when you're in pain for so long, your brain kind of forgets what normal and healthy even feel like. Its default map becomes the pain map. So by vividly visualizing a future where you're pain-free, moving easily, feeling great, you're essentially giving your brain a new blueprint, a new target to aim for. You're helping it build new, healthier pathways. And this is not just wishful thinking. There was a study with surgery patients, and get this, just one session before the operation where they visualized healing perfectly, it cut their hospital recovery time in half. 50%. It also dramatically cut down on infections. That is a huge, measurable, physical result from a simple mental exercise. It turns out our bodies have this built-in kill switch for pain. It's a survival thing. There's a super deep hypnotic state called the estale state where the body can create total numbness, so much so that they actually used to do surgeries with it, before we had modern anesthetics. It just proves that we all have the built-in hardware to generate our own anesthesia on command. So, where does all this leave us? What's the big takeaway here for how we approach chronic pain? Well, it really suggests we need a fundamental shift in where we put our focus. I think the most important thing to grasp is that we can start to see chronic pain differently. It's not a life sentence. It's not something you just have to grit your teeth and endure. It's a message. It's a signal from your nervous system that's gone a little haywire. And it's a signal that we can actually learn to interact with, to understand, and even to change. And that really leaves us with this huge final question, doesn't it? I mean, if the mind has this incredible power over something as real and as raw as physical pain, what else can it do? What else about our physical health can it influence? What are the other limits, if there are any at all?